Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Raquel. It has been a minute since I've had a chance to sit down and film a video about books, but I'm here to talk about all the books that I read in May and June. It hasn't been the best year for me for reading, if I'm being honest. Without further ado, let's just get into it. So I'm continuing on in my historical romance journey, and I read the first and second book in the Wallflowers series. I believe it was April, maybe March, I read the prequel to this series called Again the Magic, but the first actual book is called Secrets of a Summer Night, and then the second book is called It Happened One Autumn. If you're not familiar with this series, it's actually an older series, but so good so far, by the way. But it is about, four friends. They are wallflowers. This is like the Victorian time period, and it is the season where, if you've watched Bridgerton, you know what the season is, right? Where there's lots of parties and gatherings, people are trying to find marriage prospects. And a wallflower is someone who just kind of hangs out against the wall during all the parties because no one really wants to dance with them. And each one of these girls kind of has their own reason why no one seems to be interested in them. Sometimes it's a matter of dowry. Sometimes it's a matter of two of the girls are sisters and they're from America, and even though they're very rich and beautiful and they have everything going for them, no one really claims them as part of the London society because they're American, they're new money, So there's all kinds of different reasons why these girls aren't able to find marriage prospects as easy as others, and so they kind of band together, they become friends and try to help each other find a prospect, and they're really good, and I'm really having a good time. I ended up rating this one 4.5 stars, really good. And I rated this one, I think I ended up rating this one 4.5, but I do like this one better so far. This has been my favorite of the series so far. But I've heard really good things about the third one, which I plan to read in July, so we'll see. Next, I picked up the audiobook for Loving Romeo, which is the first book in the Magnolia Fall series by Laura Pavlov. I've heard a lot about this author, and she's very much compared to Elsie Silver, so I was very interested, and I think I ended up giving this book 4 stars, and I don't really have a whole lot of problems with it. I think that was just the moment where I was really not feeling romance, and the idea of starting this series for a genre that I really wasn't feeling just didn't sound appealing to me. So I have not yet picked up the other books in that series, and I don't know if I will. And that's not to say that it's a bad book. I'm sure it's a really good series. I had a good time with it. It's just not something I'm interested in right now. Next, I picked up my first Elin Hildebrand book. This is called 28 Summers. I have heard Elin Hildebrand be called the Queen of Summer books, and something I've realized about myself when I do really love a romance book, it's because it's more women's fiction. I'm finding that is really what I like more than just a romance book. I like a women's fiction book when there's a whole lot more going on in the story rather than just the romance. I feel like that's kind of boring to me. And so I picked this up, and I did really, really like this. This is just about a girl and a guy who meet back in 1993, I think. They meet in Nantucket, and they meet over Labor Day weekend. They hit it off, they have a good thing, but they all have their own separate lives going on, and so they can't really start a relationship of any kind, but they promise themselves that they will always meet up for every single Labor Day, no matter what. And they mean it. There is cheating, there is just everything you can think of. They're both having their own lives completely, and they meet every year for Labor Day, and that's it. That's their relationship over 28 years. And so we just see them living their lives. And I will say, even though the romance part of this is a big part of the plot, we actually don't see a whole lot of on-page romance in this book, which I thought was really interesting. It's just more about their lives. But one of my favorite things about this is that, I'll show you. At the beginning of every year, they have this little italicized thing. I don't know if you can see that, but it talks about popular movies and pop culture references, popular songs, big current events and things that happened during that year. And that made me feel so nostalgic to read about that and be oh my gosh, yeah, I remember that. And then, just to see both of these characters living their lives. I thought this was really, really interesting. I think the way that it was told was a little interesting. Something I kind of had a little bit of an issue with was like it's told in like third person omniscient. So like you would get the characters, but then you would also get like this random guy sitting at the bar and like what he's thinking. And then you would get like this other person at the grocery store and what they're thinking. And I don't know, I feel like if it had been in first person and we had just gotten like both of their points of view in first person, I would have liked it better. Overall, I really, really liked it, and I'm very excited to pick up another one of her books. Next, I picked up the second book in the Hopeless series by Colleen Hoover. The first book, Hopeless, is, it's kind of hard for me to explain without spoiling anything, but essentially a guy and a girl end up meeting, they go to the same school, and he is just acting weird all of the time. He's hot and he's cold, he seems interested and then he seems aggravated, and you're trying to figure out like what the hell is wrong with this guy and why is he acting so strangely, and then you find out why he's acting so strangely, and it's kind of crazy, and it's a lot darker than I was expecting it to be, but a really pretty good story. Like I really liked it. So this second one, Losing Hope, is actually kind of the same story as Hopeless, but from the guy's point of view. And I really was worried. I put a lot of space between the first book and this one because I was worried that it was going to feel very repetitive, but it doesn't actually. I think it just gives you a lot of clarity into why he was acting so strangely during a couple of those, you know, scenes from the first book. And it does overlap quite a bit of time, of course, but it does give you like a lot of backstory and stuff like that for the guy. So I did like this. I thought this was really good. I ended up giving it 4 stars. Later, I also ended up picking up the little novella that comes after that called Finding Cinderella, and it's just about kind of like 2 side characters from the Hopeless books, and it was cute. It was a really quick little read. I think I gave it like a 3 star. Next, because I was feeling so like slumpy and just nothing sounded good to me and I didn't know what to read, I went to my old faithful, which is Freida McFadden, a good fast-paced mystery thriller, always does it for me, and I read Never Lie. And I really liked it, but I will say, you know, as I think a lot of people say that this is their favorite of hers, and I would have to disagree with that. I actually think that The Teacher is my favorite so far, but this one was pretty good. I think it did help me kind of get out of my slump a little bit. So it did the job. I think I gave it 4 stars. Next, I tried again with another romance book, and I was feeling this one. This is really good. I normally am not a big fan of romance books that take place in like a big city. I'm definitely more of like a small town romance kind of girl, but this is just about, you know, a guy and a girl who met in college, had a really like good relationship. Things happened, they went their separate ways in life, and then years and years and years later, he sees her on the subway, they have a moment, and he just wants to find her and like kind of see where things went wrong. Honestly, I thought this was going to be a 5-star for me for the longest time, but then I really hated the ending. The third act breakup was like kind of ridiculous, and there was like a lot of overreactions, and that kind of ruined it for me, so I ended up giving it 4 stars, but the majority of this book was actually so good, and I highly recommend. Next, I picked up the second book in the Strange the Dreamer series, which is Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. I still kind of don't know how I feel about this series. I think the writing is incredible. I think that the world building is pretty good. I think the storytelling is good. The first one was very slow, but I appreciated it. I think it was necessary to kind of build everything and put everything together. And you got a lot of answers in this, and I appreciated that. And I loved that, you know, the 2 stories from the first book really collided here, and we got introduced to some new characters in here. And overall, I really liked it. I think at the time I rated it a 4.5, but I think upon reflection, I think it's more of like a 4. I do think I preferred Strange the Dreamer over Muse the Nightmare, but it was still very good, and I'm very impressed with the writing. It was very beautiful. I picked up The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in the Mistborn series, and I fell in love. I loved this book so much. This is kind of like a fantasy version of Ocean's 11. There's a heist, and there's several different characters that have different, you know, ways of contributing to this kind of heist major plot plan thing. The magic is so cool. It's called allomancy, and I'll put like a chart right here. It's kind of like a little bit complicated at first, but I think he does a really good job of like holding your hand through it and like reminding you all the time of like what everything means. But you know, certain metals do certain things, and it's actually pretty rare for anybody to be able to do anything with any metal at all. But then you have the Mistborn who can do stuff with all of them, and it is so cool. Like just picturing this, like I hope this becomes a movie or a TV show one day, because I think it would be so cool. I of course gave this 5 stars. Next, I read this like little novella that comes after it. You can find it in Arcanum Unbounded, but it's called The 11th Metal. And this is like a little kind of like a prequel, I guess, to the events that happened in the Final Empire. Right now, I don't feel like that's necessary. I don't feel like I got anything out of it. It was very short and quick, and just about kind of like Kelsier, who's kind of the, you know, mastermind of Final Empire. It's his kind of origin of how he's learning how to be who he is without saying anything extra. And I don't know that that particular novella really added anything for me. So it was entertaining, I guess. I think I gave it like a 3.5 star. I get anxiety when I know that there are series that I need to finish. I usually have no problem DNFing a series or a book if I don't own it. But if I own it, then it's just like staring at me like, hey, you're wasting money by not reading me. And so this book, The Final Offer, has been staring at me for months. This is the 3rd book in the Dreamland Billionaires series. I read the first 2 in January. That's how long ago I read the first 2, but I didn't love the first 2. I think I gave the first one like 4 stars, and the second one was like a 3.5. And then this is like not a short book, okay? It's kind of a brick. So I was not excited about it, but I felt like I wanted to just get it over with. So I ended up listening to it on audio, and it wasn't bad. I think it was okay. It was definitely better. I think this is the best in the series. But this whole series is just about 3 brothers who their grandfather passed away and left them his inheritance, which he owns. Dreamland, which is pretty much Disney World. They just can't use the name Disney World, but you know, it's Disney in every sense of the word. And he gives his 3 grandsons his inheritance, but they have to all do something first. The guy in this has a really bad alcohol problem, and he has to like get over that. He has to sell his summer home, but the only thing is that his ex-girlfriend that he's still been pining for lives there. And so anyway, I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was definitely better than the other ones, but I was just like, after this though, like I'm not reading romance for a while. And then I had 2 bangers, okay? I read Carrie, Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I listened to it on audio, and I highly recommend you listen to it on audio. It is a phenomenal audiobook, but this is about a girl named Carrie Soto, and she was once considered the best tennis player of all time. And now she's sitting with her dad watching this new girl, Nikki Chan, about to beat her record. And she's like, absolutely not. So she comes out of retirement to train like as one of the oldest female tennis players, train and just like increase her endurance and her speed and her strength, and just do everything she can to, you know, kind of set that mark again. Like, I am the best and I will always be the best. And obviously things aren't as easy for her as they used to be when she was young and the best. Now she really has to work for stuff, and that's not really an easy thing for her to do. Carrie Soto is a bitch, and I love her. I think she's like one of my favorite characters because she just has so much determination to be the best, and she will do whatever it takes to be the best. I just wish I had half of her determination in my general life. I loved her, and I loved her character growth over the book as she kind of like grows up and calms down and gets some perspective in life of like what's really important. And yeah, I just loved everything about this book. And I just want to point out to you that I am not a sports fan. I don't like tennis. I never watch sports. I think anybody who can make you feel so much emotion and so much interest in something that you would have never had interest before is really just kind of impressive. I gave this book 5 stars. So I think it is my favorite Taylor Jenkins Reid book. The next one I read was my very first Stephen King book, 11/22/63. I'm gonna put this down because this is gigantic, okay? This is very heavy. I'm gonna put it down. Anyway, this book is essentially about a guy who goes back in time to try to prevent the assassination of John F. Kennedy in 1963. Like, this book is a lot slower than I was thinking that it would be. I mean, I don't know what I expected. I don't know why I thought this would be fast-paced. I mean, there's a lot of words here, okay? Like I had to know that this was not going to be fast-paced. But so I think there were points where I was reading through it and I'm like, I'm never bored. Like I was never bored in this book. I don't think there's anything boring, but I did feel at certain times like, is this necessary? Does it have to be this long? Could we have done without this little part to make this book shorter? And I would think about that a couple of times throughout the book. Like, you know, I think he goes back in time to 1958 and then he has to spend 5 years in the past until we get to 1963. And so a lot of this book is just him building his life in the past, you know, getting a house, getting a job, building relationships and friendships, and, you know, like following Lee Harvey Oswald around to figure out like what his plans are going to be and how he's going to stop him. And, you know, just him generally living his life. And that's a lot of the book. Like the majority of the book is about him just living his daily life. And I thought about that. Like, is this necessary? But I think it is. And I think normally when I have a 5-star, I know pretty early on that it's going to be a 5-star. Like I know that right away. And I didn't feel that way with this book. By the way, spoiler, obviously, I gave it a 5-star for sure, but I didn't know that. I didn't know that I was going to be giving this a 5-star for the longest time. It wasn't until I got to the end and the emotional payoff, like, of everything. Like, I spent so much time with this character, with all the characters. I spent so much time in this world that I cared more. And it made me realize, like, this is why people like slower paced stories, is because the longer that you spend with characters and in a place and like giving it that time, the more you're going to care about what happens to them. And I get it. Like, you know, if you ever watch a movie is really great, right? But like those TV shows that last for seasons and seasons and seasons, that's where all your feels are at. I immediately wanted to watch the TV show. There's a TV show on Hulu. It's pretty different actually than the book. They make a lot of differences, which was at the time was frustrating for me. And I kept thinking like, oh, the book did it better, the book did it better, the book did it better. And like, I don't know if it's because of the combination of the TV show and the book, but like, it's been a while since I finished this book and I cannot stop thinking about it. I'm just now kind of seeing and reflecting on all of the amazing things about Stephen King and his writing. Like, I was so immersed in the 1950s and 1960s, like all the research that must have gone into writing this book is just incredible. Like, how much is a cup of coffee? Like, what is it? What do the cars look like? How much did they cost? You know, what are the cultural things going on at that time? Like, it doesn't shy away from, you know, there's, you know, the Jim Crow laws are happening and like there's a lot of segregation at the time, and the way that a lot of white people in the South were speaking and how they thought, like, there's no shying away from that. It is real and raw and it's ugly and it makes you a little uncomfortable, but it's real. And like, I felt like he just put so much thought and effort into this book that like, it's just so incredibly impressive. And I cannot wait to pick up my next Stephen King book. So sorry for rambling about that. Thank you so much for watching and for listening to me ramble on about books, and hopefully I will see you again next month. Thanks for watching. Bye.